everybody. Welcome back to the Free Assange Vigil. I'm Misty Winston, joined by my co-host Eric. Today we have a journalist from antiwar.com, which is one of my favorite websites. But before we get to Kyle, I'm going to go through the numbers as always. So let me get on to here. Okay, so we have, as of February 15th, 2022, we have, here we go, lots of numbers. 4,088 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for journalist and publisher Julian Assange. 1,041 days since the WikiLeaks founder was kidnapped and trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the UK in exchange for a $4.2 billion loan from the IMF. 405 days since Judge Vanessa Breitzer denied Assange bail just 2 days after motioning for his release in her ruling against extradition. 1,637 days of inhumane pretrial detention for alleged Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua Schultz. 1,041 days since the start of the political persecution of Ola Binney. 322 days since drone program whistleblower Daniel Hale pled guilty to one charge under the Espionage Act. 128 days since Daniel Hale was transferred to a communications management unit at United States Penitentiary Marion in Illinois. 925 days of confinement for Stephen Donziger. We have a goodish news update for him. 249 days since hacktivist Commander X was arrested in Mexico and extradited to the United States. In our brief mention of good news, we have 77 days since Craig Murray was released from prison, 246 days since Reality Winner was released to home confinement. She has since been placed on parole. 704 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning, 454 days of freedom for Jeremy Hammond, and we have just 55 days until we're back in DC to raise hell at the Department of Justice, and that's going to be a lot of fun. So, without further delay, we have some some fun Russia hysteria stuff to go over. And joining us to do that, we have, as I mentioned before, one of the journalists from antiwar.com. His name is Kyle Anzalone. So thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So Russia's invading Ukraine. You guys, it's happening really this time. I promise. It's real this time. It's not real. So I don't even know where you want to start. I mean, I guess today Russia announced that they're moving their troops away from the borders, but then the Western media is saying they're not actually. It's a big hot mess. So what do you think about this whole manufacturing of consent that's going on right now? Or do you think it's just a distraction, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to this because the U.S. policy towards Russia has been extremely aggressive ever since the Soviet Union became Russia. I mean, the NATO expansion is a real issue. The deployment of the strategic missile defense systems into Eastern Europe are real security issues for Russia. And so this isn't I think, just, a complete fabrication like the Iran nuclear program or something like that. But at the same time, almost all of this does seem to be driven by the White House and, the U.S. media. I mean, it's absolutely shocking that you have the White House more hawkish and more, warning about a potential Russian invasion than you do the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainian government is really benefiting from this. Any potential sanctions against the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, maybe the one country in the world that really stands to benefit from that is Ukraine. That's going to, require more natural gas flowing through Ukraine. And so that it would probably be a strategic win for them for that to happen. Just today, Biden came out and said it's not going to be a free ride for Americans when we sanction Russia's economy. That's going to hurt the American economy. It's going to make the energy sector tight. Of course, it doesn't have to happen. Ukraine's not a U.S. ally, and so maybe if we just declare that they're not a U.S. ally and will never be a part of NATO, Russia will have no interest in invading anyways. And so we could diffuse the whole crisis. But, assuming that we do continue to provoke it, we have no intention of backing Ukraine anyways. And so I don't know why levy the sanctions and hurt the American and particularly the European economy with them. But, they draw these stupid red lines and really they just encircle themselves with them. And then the only move is to hurt the American people, which is where Joe Biden has led us now. And, I guess the real threat is they might even put on some of these sanctions if Russia doesn't invade because the Congress is more hawkish than the White House. And, there's this bipartisan Senate bill that they're working through that would levy heavy sanctions on Russia if they moved forward with that. So, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on, when you're actually talking about where the troop movements are. I saw just yesterday The State Department or the Defense Department was claiming Russia moved more troops into the area today. Russia was saying some of their troops were rotating out. I think that was just scheduled as a part of the war games they have going on in Belarus. And also, when the U.S. says they're moving troops close to the Ukrainian border, sometimes it means like 100 miles. And so it could be kind of loose as to if these are actually moving close to Ukraine's border or not. So I don't know how much the troop movements are going on, but it doesn't seem like Russia has given up on diplomacy. And so to say that Russia is going to invade, especially within the next couple of weeks, I think it is a bit alarmist at this point.
Yes. And I think it's interesting too that we freak out because Russia is moving troops within their own country. They're not in Ukraine. We have troops literally everywhere. Like the United States is everywhere, and yet we're moralizing to them about moving troops within their own borders. It's fascinating to me that that's a thing that we do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, NATO, I think it's France, the UK, and Estonia or Latvia, one or the other. Both of those countries border Russia. But in one of those countries, they were conducting NATO military drills 61 miles from the Russian border. Right. And then they're going to complain about Russia maneuvering troops either within their own country or just within Belarus. Right. Which is the one kind of Russian ally in Eastern Europe. Although at the same time, it's not like that state wasn't drifting towards the American orbit in the early Trump administration. And so, it's, I don't know, people pretend it's a foregone conclusion that Belarus is like some stern Russian ally and about to become another Soviet state or something like that. But anyways, just on all of this, I mean, the rhetoric is still, I think, so alarmist. And again, the Americans are more hawkish than anybody else, including the Ukrainians. I guess maybe like the Eastern Europeans, like Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, have been pretty aggressive on this too. But it's mainly the Americans worrying that there's going to be an invasion. And we keep hearing this rhetoric: when the ground freezes. Doesn't that just sound like the fakest like deep state narrative that you've ever heard in your life? And so I'm very suspicious, that Russia is actually going to invade. At the same time, it is an opportunity, I think, to talk about like valid Russian security concerns, and that if the U.S. really does continue to push the NATO membership issue and roll strategic weapons, particularly the Patriot missiles, into Ukraine, it could become a real issue. I just read today that Israeli officials said, I think last year at some point, the Biden administration was trying to sell Iron Dome interceptors to Ukraine, and the Israelis blocked it because they maintain a relationship with Russia, actually. But the Biden administration may be willing to go pretty far on this and actually cross some Russian red lines, in which case an invasion, is in the cards, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
Did you get a chance to watch the Matt Lee clip where he's
yes,
where he's going after?
Thank you, Matt Lee.
What's his name?
Ned Price.
Yeah,
needleneck Ned, such a turd.
I enjoyed it. The one thing that I thought was, there's a couple things I thought was a little off in some of the combating questions that he had was he went into that realm of like, hey, you're talking about false flags. This is like Alex Jones territory here. I thought it was kind of like it was helping. It was kind of like helping the narrative of like, don't believe anything in this vicinity over here, as well as kind of combating like the whole idea of another unjust war.
No.
You have any thoughts on that at all?
No, I guess, there is some fairness to that, because it's not like crisis actors, and particularly like during the Syrian civil war, there were the fabricated videos of atrocities and things like that. And so to just dismiss it all as Alex Jonesy is unfair. I guess the one thing I will say about this, to say that you're going to have a false flag in the Donbass, where actually not a false flag, he was alleging they're going to make a fake video of a fake, attack, not even Like it would be one thing to say that you're going to set off a bomb at some market somewhere in eastern Ukraine, but I guess I have to imagine that if they faked a video somewhere, like some of the people who lived around there would go outside with their smartphones and, you know, walk around and kind of show them. And I think that would have to hit in the Western press. You know, when it's Syria, people have no idea what the hell they're looking at. And so if a bunch of Syrians are outside on their phones, speaking in Arabic, showing like that there was no bombing somewhere, that thing might not get picked up by the American media just because they won't buy it. But if it's in Ukraine, I think that, you know, likely it would be very hard to do something like that. So I'm very suspicious of what the State Department was alleging. It seems pretty far-fetched to say that they would fake an attack. I guess it would be another thing to say that, you know, they're actually going to kill a bunch of people and claim it was, you know, the Ukrainians. But
Right.
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember about Matt Lee is he's one of the best mainstream media journalists that's out there, but he's still a mainstream media journalist.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, he's still, I mean, he's done some really great stuff, and he's really you know, managed to push back on a lot of things. He's asked about Assange, so you know I love him. But he's still a mainstream media journalist.
Yeah.
So I mean, you kind of have to take everything that he does. It's still great that he pushed back on Ned Price, and I love
absolutely.
watching Ned Price squirm. It's like my favorite thing. I love it so much. He's such a turd, you guys. He's such a liar.
Yeah.
It's very clear. I mean, obviously, he works for the White House. I mean, you can't work for the White House and be honest. So yeah, it's fun to watch him squirm though. And Matt Lee does a great job. And I love that he just keeps pushing. He's not afraid to just keep pushing and keep hammering, even though it's getting combative and stuff. It's a lot of people in the White House press room will ask a question and then very meekly shut up.
Yeah, and you know, one important thing is that, you know, Ned Price is supposed to like be the State Department spokesperson, so he works for the State Department, which is kind of supposed to mean he works for the American people too, I guess. But you know, you expect him to be a little bit of a liar, but you know, at some point you would think he would admit like, hey, we don't have evidence, and not push it all the way to start making these accusations against American journalists. But you know, this is getting wrapped up. Jen Psaki also did it, I think, on the same day to an NPR journalist over the raid on the ISIS leader in Syria. But then just today we have the intelligence community leaking to the AP that they're concerned about Zero Hedge pushing Russian propaganda.
Yes.
And you know, it's one thing to, you know, say like, hey, don't believe everything you read on Zero Hedge or something like that, but for the US government to claim it's Russian propaganda is absolutely absurd and very concerning. And honestly, it seems like we've rolled back the clock, 6 years now to January of 2016 or 2017, I guess. Yeah, 5 years, where you have like the Hamilton 68 dashboard, and they have all these different websites that are they're Russian proxy sites. They're just amplifying Russian propaganda. And in some, I guess, respect, that wasn't that big of a concern of censorship during the Trump administration, but now I think it is. And I think it's one of the things that we have to really be concerned about looking forward is, and with the you know, Russian aggression narrative that has been so heavily revamped over the past 3 months, is that they're going to use this like red baiting to you know, increase censorship and to increase the narrative control. They can't do it so much with China, I think, right now, because of how hard they went against Trump for all of his anti-China rhetoric and called him a racist and demonized him so heavily for it. So it doesn't play as well, but the Putin, you know, Russian rhetoric is very easy to just throw around, and, you know, just say, oh, that's a Russian talking point, automatically is like, oh, that person's a terrible person.
Yeah. And it's very interesting to me that this is all kind of happening as the Russiagate narrative is falling apart. You know, it really fell apart a long time ago, but even more so. You know, now you know, we're having all of this stuff come out about who actually organized all of this stuff, and it's kind of become a PR nightmare. And so, I mean, but I think you're right though. I think that Russia's a very easy boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
Very easy. I mean, this is kind of ingrained in American DNA to be terrified of Russia. So I think that this is
haven't we demonized at this point, though? Really, if you think about it, we have the entire region of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
We have Russia, the biggest country in the world,
the global
China.
South.
Yeah,
pretty much
South America. Yeah, you know, like it. we have, troops all over Northern Africa. Most people don't know that, but we do have people all over Northern Africa.
Yes.
You could basically throw out any name of any country in Africa at this point and
Africom.
demonize them. Oh yeah, that whole operation going on as well. Like, but who's demonized more than Russia in at least in the last 50, 60 years?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic point, and one of the real acceptable bad guys and everything still too is if you make a movie and all the bad guys are Arabs or something like that, people might feel a little bit uncomfortable with it. But if you make a movie and all the bad guys are Russians or at least have Eastern European accents and things like that, well, you just assume they're the bad guys, right? That's kind of how it works in the Marvel movies, right? Like they're all bad until they become Americans and then they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's long-standing. That's long-standing Hollywood propaganda right there, that, the bad guys are Russians. That's prevalent throughout Hollywood over decades. I mean, really since the Cold War, but I mean, I don't know, this whole thing, it seems, do you think, because I feel like more people are kind of becoming aware of the nonsense that is, that is this whole thing. And I don't know if that's just me being, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? When
Optimistic?
Yeah, not optimistic, but I can't think of the term I'm wanting to use. But it's like I don't know. Do I want to believe that that's true, or is it really true? Because it feels like that to me. It feels like, especially I think since social media has really kind of grown, as much as they're trying to rein it in, and they're doing a good job. I mean, they're doing a very good job of siloing us into our echo chambers and banning and suspending voices who speak uncomfortable truths. They are very good at that, but I do think it has given us an opportunity to spread information more quickly and more efficiently that they don't want us to have. And so I think that there are a lot of people who are now able to better recognize the propaganda when they see it. And I think that the Russia thing, I think Russiagate really helped with that because it was so obviously stupid. I mean, a lot of people fell for it. I'm not going to deny that. But I think that it was, once it started to fall apart, it really fell apart quickly. And there are still people who push those lines still today, which is fascinating to me. In the face of all logic and evidence, they still push that line of attack that Russia somehow hacked the elections or helped Trump get elected or whatever they want to.
I still see conservatives spout the 2001 narrative of that we have to stop terrorism.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is. Listen, propaganda in this country is incredibly effective. I talk about this all the time. We are the most propagandized country on earth. I don't even think it's close. I don't think it's close at all. And what's really nefarious about the propaganda in this country is that it is kind of covert. It's not in your face, but it is very, it's everywhere. I mean, from birth. You are propagandized in this country, the American exceptionalism and all of that stuff. So many people are so willing to just, of course, Russia's the bad guy because we're good. And so if we have a problem with Russia, then it's their fault. Like, you know what I mean? It's a kind of very simple-minded mentality, but I don't know. It just feels like there's more people kind of becoming aware of how this all works. At least I hope so, because I'm tired.
Yeah,
it's
well,
exhausting.
I mean, distrust in the mainstream press is at all-time lows, and that is really important. I guess when you do have institutions crumble and things like that, and all this new stuff rise up, that doesn't mean that people are instantly going to adopt our narrative or start listening to the anti-war, the pro-free speech positions and things like that. But at the very least, it does create that opportunity. And I think honestly that, the competition, even though there are things, that are rising up that are just as bad as the mainstream media in either pushing more propaganda or other kinds of outright stupid lies that are really problematic. But at the same time, they lack the same legitimacy as the people on TV news and the fancy suits with the, all the nice captions and B-roll footage. And, they talked to some guy in Ukraine who says that, oh yeah, this old lady tells me that she's going to shoot Russians if they come on her street. Not that, I'm sure all of us who I mean, I've never been to Ukraine. I don't want to speak for you two, but I do recognize Nazi and anti-Semitic emblems. And so, when I watch that footage, I noticed that the soldier that's training the old lady has on the Azov Battalion's logo, which is what the Wolfwagen or something like that. It's yellow and blue, like two lines crossed with another line. You could look it up. Aaron Mate has some great Twitter thread on it. And you could see like right there, it's a neo-Nazi training this old lady. And of course, everybody speaking in the mainstream media about it has no idea. But the people in the alternative media do. And so, because we're in the alternative media and they're on the TV and everything like that, when you say it to some people, they think you're a conspiracy theorist. But at least like when, you're going up against just some other person with a YouTube channel in their hoodie and hat and in their basement, talking after they're done with their other work for the day, you're on a little bit more level playing ground. And people will just listen to like whoever brings the best like facts and logic, or at least hopefully. And so I think there's real opportunities to really switch and break the narrative that has, at least since the fall of the Soviet Union, the past 30 years, captured America and wrecked the American empire. And the unipolar moment that we had, completely wasted it on stupid wars in the Middle East. And we're going to pay the price as Americans for decades, if not generations to come, of all like the stupid misadventures, not only just the way America is going to be viewed around the world as it becomes less powerful. It's going to become far more prevalent that people were absolutely disgusted with killing millions of people in the Middle East, randomly, torturing and picking up a generation of young Iraqi men, shipping some of them off to Cuba, and all this other insanely terrible things that the U.S. has done over the past 30 years. Those are going to be real consequences that America is going to have to reckon with, not just the $6 trillion in debt and all the other unnecessary costs they've levied on us and everything like that. That's going to come due, and it's going to be a real problem that we're going to have to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah, everything you just mentioned is just it has to come to a head at some point.
Yes.
And the numbers, the 6 trillion spent in the Middle East, the 30 trillion in debt, the millions killed in the Middle East, the whatever the number is in Northern Africa, and then other various parts of the world. At some point, it has to come to a head. And I'm not a great historian, but I do kind of get a lot with the either independent journalists or comics who talk about how this is kind of the fall of Rome, right? And I would like to imagine that there's some sort of parallel there. I keep hearing about the expansions of their military, the tremendous amount of debt, the kind of collapse of the morals of society, right? These kind of like these parallels, right? But at some point you got to go, what is the breaking point? It's gotten so out of hand. Do you follow any of the historical parts of any other regimes or enterprises or empires that have fallen at all?
I mean, I guess, one thing that I have looked at on this is the U.S. ability to project economic, warfare and things like that. And so like right now, Iran is trading oil with Venezuela and giving them the chemicals they need to double their oil export in 2021 because they're trading with Iran. And so, the U.S. is clearly less able to project power merely by sanctioning different countries. I mean, they could isolate Afghanistan. We could, do. I mean, I have no idea how bad it's going to be this winter in Afghanistan. I'm absolutely horrified to really look into it and see like how bad that suffering is. I mean, I try to pay attention, but I think the numbers are going to be scary by the end of it. But Russia, I don't think that the sanctions threat really deters it. And even Biden admits it's going to hurt the American economy too. Mm-hmm. And so, I think those are real indicators to me that America's power on the global stage is starting to falter a little bit. I mean, also you look at Afghanistan on as much as, Biden, I guess, could have escalated and put 50,000 American troops in Afghanistan, that really wasn't an option. The Taliban did really kind of chase the Americans out of Afghanistan. And honestly, they probably would have done it a year or so earlier if it wasn't for, well, Trump first ramping up the air warfare and just dropping a very large number, really uptick from Obama. Nobody talked about, but Trump dropped a ton of bombs on Afghanistan. But then after that, negotiating that deal and allowing like an 18-month exit, it did extend the war and allowed the Americans to stay even longer. But had he not done that, they could have been chased out even earlier. So, I think these are real signs that, America isn't quite as strong or able to project power as it was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yes. And I think that there are parallels to Rome, but I think here's the problem. The United States empire is far larger. It's going to be, when this crashes, I think it's going to be devastating globally, really. I mean, you can't have an empire this powerful, this large, and have it collapse in on itself and it not have dramatic impacts. I mean, that ripple effect is going to be far reaching. And it's unfortunate because it's really totally avoidable. Could have been. I don't know. We're probably past the point of no return at this point, but it really is avoidable. The problem with humans is we don't learn.
Yeah.
We don't learn.
And just one more point on that. I think the way, the fall of Rome, people think about the barbarians coming in and plundering Rome and all that. I don't think it will ever look like that in the United States. Like the Mexicans aren't going to invade. The Canadians aren't going to invade. China and Russia aren't going to come across the world's largest ocean, to come mess with the Americans, who will still have nuclear weapons, right? Like even if the American empire collapses, the nukes aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And so, the way that the America would be plundered, I guess, if the empire really did collapse, would be like the Soviet Union, where, the Americans just came in after and absolutely stole everything and made the people even more poor. You know what I mean? Like the 90s were an awful decade for the Soviets. And so there may be something like that coming to America, where, the rich and elites flee the country with their money for safer havens, and then whoever is dominant economically on the global scale is able to take advantage of what's left of the American economy. That is something I think we'd be concerned about.
Yes.
Do you guys, as this whole Russia talk started to escalate here, God, has it been what, a month plus now at this point? Did you guys start to see more traffic to antiwar.com at all, and were people curious about gathering information about what, just trying to get another perspective than just the corporate media's perspective?
I mean, maybe I should know this, but I have no idea about the traffic on antiwar.com. I could say with my podcast, Conflicts of Interest that I host, we've definitely had additional listeners over the past couple of months, kind of like during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. We had a pretty big bump up in the amount of people listening. And so we're seeing that now. But I guess differently, this happens like once every couple of years to me, where I'll have like friends, family, or former coworkers who will just send me a text message like, hey, you think we're going to war? And so I have gotten a couple of those in the past couple of weeks. And that I don't think has happened since after the Soleimani assassination. And so that is one of the metrics that I use, is like, when I have people that I know who aren't super interested in politics, but they know this is my job, they like, we're friends, they like me, we talk about other stuff most of the time, but they'll just be like, hey, I'm seeing a lot of this, even though I don't really watch the news, what's going on? And so that's been interesting. I think does indicate there's a real increasing interest from people in this, and also that they're not just switching on CNN and listening to whatever Brian Stelter says. That they're actually at least interested enough to see somebody with a different viewpoint.
Oh, Brian Stelter. That makes me happy because I've been seeing that too. I mean, because I focus so much on, Assange and actual journalism and narrative control and all of that stuff. I have seen, the ratings for mainstream media are abysmal. I mean, it is terrible. I think Joe Rogan gets more listeners per podcast than like the entirety of all of the mainstream networks do in prime time, combined. And so I think that really really says something. When Joe Rogan, who would self-admittedly say he's just like some meathead, you know what I mean? He's, you know,
Right.
he's a comedian and a guy that likes fights, and like he knows he's not a journalist, he's not, you know, but he's still the fact that he's able to pull that many viewers away from mainstream media is honestly makes me so happy. Makes me so, I mean, it I guess it makes me happy, and it also terrifies me a little bit because it speaks to how far media has fallen. And I think that, genuinely speaking, and I know that Trump said this, and it, you know, people love to like push that off as like, oh, you're just a Trump supporter, but mainstream media is absolutely an enemy of the people. There's no question about it. You know, they're the ones that lie us into every war. They're the ones, I mean, they are completely under corporate capture. And it's terrifying because the same corporations that own our press also own our government. So it's like an entire, you know, it is all just this whole harmonious, corrupt machine working together to propagandize the hell out of us for nefarious purposes. So the fact that they're losing viewership and that they don't have the pull and the confidence of the people, it makes me very happy because there's nothing more terrifying to me than a country educated by Brian Stelter.
Right. And look, you know, like Rogan will have on HR McMaster, and you know, you cannot like the guy for various reasons, but he had on Dave Smith recently, and
Yes.
he did a
Yeah.
10-minute clip talking about the Yemen war.
Yes.
And I think it may be, I'm sure it is, the most viewed clip of Yemen, where the Houthis were not described as Iranian backed. It wasn't presented as a Saudi-Iran proxy conflict, and it was presented as an American-led military intervention. And that is so important that Dave did that. And you know, he could have gone on like Fox Business News, like he goes on the Kennedy, but you know, he would have only gotten 3 minutes to say it there. She would have talked over him
You're
at
right.
the end. And then, you know, 10,000, 10, 20, 30,000 people would have seen the clip they put out. Maybe, you know, 50,000 would have watched it live. But here you have what, like hundreds of thousands who have viewed that one YouTube clip, that 10-minute thing. 10 million plus are actually going to listen to that Rogan show. That is huge and so important. And so, yeah, if anybody hasn't seen that clip yet of Dave Smith talking about Yemen on, you know, I'm guessing like, you know, you talk about it enough that your listeners will be informed on Yemen, but it's a great thing to just put out there to, you know, anybody who's going to like have a favorable view of Rogan, because I think Dave does a pretty good, like just basic man job of explaining the war.
Yeah, and the thing I love about people like Dave Smith or even like Scott Horton, they are very, very adept at explaining things in a way that isn't, you know, academic. It's very everyman, which I think that's something that I love about Joe Rogan. I'm not a huge Joe Rogan fan. I've watched a few of his podcasts. My favorite thing is that people are, you know, get mad when he has somebody on that they don't like. I just don't watch those episodes. That's a thing you can do.
Right.
You can just choose to not watch it. That's a
Right.
great, like, you know, you have like free will to just not watch it. It's great. But that's what I love about, you know, people like Joe Rogan, is that he is, first of all, incredibly curious. And I love that. I love people that ask a ton of questions, and he does that. He's also very aware of the fact that he doesn't know everything, which I love about him. But like people like Dave, I love when they can go on, and he was able to explain a very complex issue. You know, Yemen, this is not something that's easy. This is decades long. This is very involved, and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts. And he was able to spend 10 minutes, and he did it in 10 minutes, giving the broad strokes in a way that the average American citizen could easily understand. And that's very valuable.
Yep.
Incredibly valuable.
I have people who I guess place themselves on the left side of things, who, you know, are at least not too left, that they're willing to watch stuff like that, and who are still completely oblivious to the fact that even anything was going on in Yemen, let alone this generation's biggest you know, genocide happening, you know, in the world. And when I years ago, when I brought attention to this, they kind of saw me as like, you know, the modern day kind of hippie tree hugger type, not the 70s type of being like, why do you care about people in Yemen? You know, and then as I would explain it more and more, and with a less emotion and just kind of more like kind of factual way of explaining it, it took years, but they've decided now to look at that specific, event that's happening and take it with some more seriousness. And then, if you think about it, the attacks have been going on for close to a decade now. And so you have the kind of what you guys were just explaining, the first time maybe ever since this has started to take place, Dave Smith on Joe Rogan going, here's what's going on. It's amazing that it takes this long for something to happen. And as a side note, I just want to say this too, that at the beginning of Biden's presidency, he was, being courageous and acknowledging the Armenian genocide 100 years after the fact. It's like, dude, are you going to mention also that there's a current genocide happening?
Because we're arming and funding and participating in it currently. We can't bring that up, silly. We got to wait for 100 years.
I mean, he did as a candidate, though. That was the thing. He was calling Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, the pariah prince. He was saying that he was going to end the war in Yemen. That when he came in, his first week in office, over a year ago now, he said he was going to end offensive weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. And here we are, almost $1 billion worth of weapon sales later. And he's still planning on selling Saudi Arabia new interceptors and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
But Putin, Kyle Putin. Focus on Putin. That's my favorite thing. Not my favorite thing. It's disgusting. But, we're currently hyperventilating over, Russia maybe invading Ukraine, despite the fact that Russia has said they're not doing it. Ukraine has said it's not happening. Ukraine has asked us to calm the fuck down. But that's all we hear about in mainstream media. That's it. That is all we hear about. But we don't ever hear about the fact that, we're committing genocide in Yemen, or that we're standing by as Israel commits genocide and apartheid in Israel, or that, there's this whole host that we're arming literal Nazis in Ukraine. We're sending weapons to literal Nazis, not like pretend Nazis. Like everybody is calling every trucker ever on the planet Earth is a Nazi. That not like that, like actual Nazis. We're giving them weapons. But we don't ever hear about that. We never hear about that. All we want to hear, it's seriously about Putin. It's like this. That's why I asked earlier, do you feel like this is a bit of a distraction? And I know that it is serious, and we should take it seriously. It is a very intense geopolitical situation, but it seems like this is the butt Putin thing has been being used, really heavily since 2016. And there's been a lot that has gone down in that time, where all the mainstream media does is hyperventilate about Vladimir Putin and Russia.
Right. And yeah, no, as you point out, there's a lot of important things happening that they could really spend a lot of time paying attention to and really save some lives, like giving some real coverage of the Yemen war, where I think just today Saudi Arabia was bombing the country's communication ministry. We know last time they bombed a communications building, they knocked out the power in Yemen, and then I don't know, maybe exploited that opportunity to bomb a migrant detention facility and kill 91 people with an American-made bomb. But that's, certainly a concern and something the media could spend a hell of a lot more time on. The Amnesty International report outlining Israel as an apartheid state has happened in the past, couple of weeks, and that's gotten almost no attention in the American government. Maybe we could have a conversation about the billions of dollars in military aid we give a year to an apartheid state. And Amnesty International, anybody who went to college in the United States probably had like an Amnesty International chapter at their school, right? And so this nobody's gonna believe they're just like rampant anti-Semites, right? Like that's not the reason that report came out. It's because Israel is an apartheid state. Or, oh man, Joe Biden just plundered the bank account of the Afghan government.
Yes.
Stole $7 billion and basically condemned the Afghan people to suffering through the rest of this winter. And these are issues that could really be focused on, rather than just saying, oh well, the Taliban are mean to girls and they didn't let all the girls back in school, which, you know, it is a bad thing. Like, I'm not like saying like, boy, I wish, you know, we lived like the Taliban and women didn't go to school or anything like that's horrible.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not like all the girls in Afghanistan were going to school before this was happening anyways. It's not like they were safe. They were dying by U.S. airstrikes. They were being harassed. You know, the American soldiers were coming in their homes, kicking down their doors, breaking all their windows out.
Raping them. Let's
Yeah.
be honest about what's happening. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, yeah. And I mean, and in particular, the fact that they're using women and girls, which listen, under Taliban, women and girls don't have it great. Like, nobody's trying to pretend like that's different. But WikiLeaks also exposed the fact that that whole line, that whole, you know, propaganda, you know, the way that they're pushing that is very much a CIA PR stunt. They used it in France. Certainly they used it here, but it's something that they use to, you know, get the public to be supportive of the war. And hey, look, we have to do it for the women and the children. And that works on a great many of people. Worked on Marianne Williamson, totally worked on Marianne Williamson. I am so very happy to know, or to say that she, once she was confronted about that, she changed her position. I appreciate that about her. She is usually pretty open to being corrected. But yeah, I mean, this is yeah, nobody's saying that women and girls have it great in Afghanistan under the Taliban. Certainly not. But we also have to be mindful of the fact that they will exploit emotional avenues in order to manufacture the consent for the continuation of the brutality of that country. And I can guarantee you that it is far worse when they're being bombed by United States, you know, drone strikes and, you know, all of that. That's certainly worse, in my opinion. I mean, and we can't ever pretend like us meddling has ever done anybody any good.
Right. Yeah, and that's the part that's so frustrating about, right, is they pretend like up until the Taliban took over, Kabul was Manhattan, and you know, women just had every opportunity and could do whatever the hell they wanted, and there were, you know, but the cultural aspects of Afghanistan's treatment towards women was always there. The literacy rate for girls was always a lot lower. In the article, The Other Afghan Women by Anand Gopal at the New York Times, he lays out how 70% of the Afghan women live in the countryside, and they saw no benefits that the women in the Afghan cities did during the 20-year American occupation and suffered the whole time. And so, you know, is in no way to justify what the Taliban are doing, but just to say that, you know, we can't pretend like it's gone from Manhattan to the 5th century. At best, it was Riyadh anyways before, and you know, it's worse, but
yeah. And your at best example is the country that we're funding to help have the genocide in Yemen, you know.
Yeah, and that's what's really frustrating to me about you know, all of the Russia hysteria. Again, not to say that it's not an important issue, it doesn't need, you know, some coverage, but it's hyperventilating, and this has been going on since 2016. I mean, Rachel Maddow spent 5 years covering almost nothing else. I mean, Russia's going to turn off your power. Russia, Putin. I mean, there's the whole mashup video of her. Just that's all she talked about ever. And there's so many things going on in the world that need coverage. I mean, hello, we're torturing Julian Assange to death currently, right now. We're doing that. And that never gets talked about on mainstream media. He's a fucking journalist. This is a direct assault on the future of press freedom, and journalists won't talk about it. It's fascinating to me. I don't know. It's very frustrating. And I think that we're seeing the results of that. And I think that's why mainstream media is so desperate to demonize people like Joe Rogan, because they realize that they're becoming very quickly irrelevant.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that's probably a large part of the targeting is because, you know, he's competition. And, you know, one of the easy ways to take care of your competition is to get the government to censor them.
Yeah, cancel him, you know?
Yep.
And he's kicking their asses, if we're being completely honest. Again, I think, you know, he's getting more than all of them combined in the middle of prime time. And so, and it's also very funny to me that we have all of these sex scandals cropping up, mostly at CNN. It's interesting. Also, Fox News, I guess, had some a few years back, but they've been a little quiet on that front recently. But, you know, but they want to cancel Joe Rogan. You know, the hypocrisy is amazing, but you can tell that this is an act of desperation, both on the part of the media and also on the part of the, you know, narrative managers in general. They're losing control and they know it.
Yeah, no. What CNN has done over the past few years with the Cuomo scandal was absolutely amazing, right?
Yeah.
Where you had one of their hosts first interview his brother and give him so favorable coverage for months and months and months. And at a time where they were actually talking about him maybe being a presidential candidate, subbing in for Biden, all these crazy rumors were going around, right? And then he helped his brother in, apparently cover up a set scandal. I haven't looked into all the details of all
Yes.
that part of it, but anyways, that's a real issue that happened at CNN that should be addressed. And they just kind of pretend like, oh, the Republicans hate the Cuomos, oh, the Republicans just kind of hate CNN, and they invent this fake scandal and they brush it off as that and move on, when there should be real questions about what's happening in the CNN newsroom right now because of this. I mean for all the mainstream media, of course, but over that in particular, it seems like it should be really questioning what the hell is going on. It's something that could really capture like people's attention, right? Like American people like set scandals.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, sex sells.
It's so telling too that of what they're willing to cover, what is going on behind the scenes. It's multi-layered. Like we can get in the whole thing too about Anderson Cooper being CIA, whatever.
Yeah.
But like it is so telling of like how what sex scandals they'll cover and what is
Which
going
ones
on
they
behind
ignore?
the
Like Joe Biden
scenes.
and Tara Reid. They don't talk about that unless they're
perfect
disparaging Tara
example.
Reid. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
They disparage Tara Reid, but they don't give it adequate coverage. Believe all women unless they accuse a Democrat.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Or,
terms and conditions apply.
Just even now, even when you get some like decent coverage on an issue, right? So like, you'll get Tucker Carlson giving a pretty good take on the Russia issue, but then he'll end it with, but that's because we got to worry about China.
Yeah.
Or, all these issues. It's, oh yeah, well, we shouldn't intervene here because we got to go here. I heard Lindsey Graham today saying that Russia and China aren't the top issue. It's the Hitler-loving Ayatollah of Iran that is the main threat to attack America. And that's, what Lindsey Graham thinks we should all be worried about this week. So it's just so crazy.
Well, and it also, we should also bring up the fact that, mainstream media, in particular, MSNBC, they were the worst about the whole Russiagate thing. And they spent 5 years trying to pretend like Putin gave us Trump, when in fact, MSNBC gave us Trump. CNN gave us Trump. They gave him billions in free airtime, billions of dollars in free. They covered his empty podium for like an hour while Bernie Sanders was giving a speech. Not one breakaway to Bernie Sanders, not one time. Not to say that would have made any difference, but I mean, Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski they got caught on a hot mic promising to give him softball questions. But then they want to turn around and say that it's Putin. You gave us Trump. Are you kidding? You gave us Trump. And you did so at the behest of the Hillary Clinton campaign. I mean, we know, thanks to WikiLeaks, that he was used as a Pied Piper candidate, and she convinced her minions in the media to give him favorable coverage and prop him up as a real viable candidate. And that's how we got Donald Trump. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. The American people were absolutely sick and tired of the two establishment parties. They had tried Bush, who was the most establishment Republican they could. They tried Obama, who was supposed to be a progressive Democrat. And they were both absolutely terrible and represented the same foreign policy of, intervention and endless wars, just mainly crony capitalism policies and things like that. And so, when they had the opportunity to pit somebody else, well, the media just put Trump in front of them all day long. And so that's who they wound up with, because everybody at least knew that, Trump wasn't, I guess people felt pretty sure that Trump wasn't bought and paid for by the same people that everybody else was bought and paid for. I mean, that was like his main campaign stick, right? Was, I have $1 billion. I don't need your money. Vote for me because I'm owned by myself. And I guess everybody expected some nepotism and, some that the Trump, brand would do very well while he was president, but at least who's making the money there. And I think that's part of the reason people were so, happy to go and how Trump ended up as president.
Yes. And I think he still gave us one of the best debate moments ever in the history of debates when he confronted all 48 people on the stage and said, I bought you and I bought you and I bought you. That was great. I mean, Trump is an asshole. He is a racist piece of shit, but he has no gift for subtlety whatsoever. And he so very often blurted the truth out when he wasn't supposed to. That was one of those times. We're going to go take their oil. I mean, over and over and over again, he just had no ability to just keep his mouth shut. And so he very often exposed things. He ripped the mask right off of a lot of things. I mean, I guess on the flip side, the trouble with that is a lot of people thought that he was, the problem. He wasn't just because the way I see it is he's like the seizure that led to the diagnosis of the brain tumor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you make a great point, because now anytime anybody talks about Biden, you could, your most liberal friend, you could say, well, he just gave hundreds of millions in military aid to Trump's favorite dictator. And yeah, Trump called al-Sisi, Egypt's dictator, his favorite dictator. Like, everybody knows that. Biden gave him hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid. Can't dispute either of those facts. And so those kind of, taking the mask off moments are important, like you said, about being in Syria to steal the oil and things like that. Biden, even in his old age, is far too tactful to say something like that, I think.
Well, they don't let him speak very often. He doesn't give interviews. He doesn't speak to the press. He doesn't. I mean, I think that we have the State of the Union coming up on March 1st. I'm getting my popcorn ready. I cannot wait. How he's going to make it through an entire speech is, they're going to have to juice him up something hard. Because he can't form a coherent sentence most of the time, which, this is what I hope, if nothing else, that people are starting to recognize between Trump and Biden. It doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter. Joe Biden's not making any hard decisions. Come on, you guys. He's just the front. He's just the face. He's the puppet that they lead out there. Donald Trump wasn't making decisions. It doesn't matter who the president is. And I hope that people are starting to recognize that more. It seems like they are, for sure, but we'll see. I don't know.
That seemed to be the consensus years ago, that the president doesn't make decisions. And for some reason, that whole idea has just completely gone away.
Obama, I think Obama really set people back a lot. He was very good. You have to give him credit. He is incredibly charming. He's very charismatic. He's quick. He's quick-witted. He's unbelievably intelligent. He knows exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it. The dude went on national TV and was like, we tortured some folks. And people were like, oh, he's so nice. Like, what?
Yeah.
We tortured some folks. Like, that's crazy to me. I mean, a girl got her arm blown off at Standing Rock, and he's like, we're going to let it play out. And people were like, yeah, Obama is the best president of my lifetime. The only, controversy he's had is a tan suit. I mean, he extrajudicially murdered somebody, a child, and nobody cares. That's not a controversy to them. It's the tan suit. It's crazy to me, the mythology that's been built up around Barack Obama.
Absolutely. And yeah, and one that I think probably should be the biggest scandal, of course, was the coup in Ukraine that he pulled off. That really is the reason we're in the predicament that we're in now.
Yes.
That's probably the most singular mark. I mean, you could maybe go back to 2008 and Bush announcing that one day Ukraine was going to become a NATO member. That's pretty big too. But maybe the coup in 2014, because that really I think was a regime change war in the way that Iraq was, where it really did shift in a way the way that Ukraine was politically balanced. And it seems like the leadership of the country has been far more pro-NATO since the coup happened. Both Poroshenko and now Zelensky just this week said, yeah, we still want to join NATO. That they're both very NATO leaders. And yeah, I mean, there's no questioning that the U.S. Did a coup there. Obama said it. Victoria Nuland was caught planning the coup 2 weeks before it happened. I have a brand new episode of my show out, Conflicts of Interest, with Scott Horton today, where he goes through this whole coup narrative. So yeah, if anybody wants to, hear exactly what happened in 2014, he knows all the players and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, that should have been like a top scandal. If people really understood that, then they would probably understand what was happening in Ukraine today and really be telling Biden, hell yeah, we're not sending troops there. In fact, we really don't care what happens in Ukraine. And if anything, just negotiate with Russia and tell them that, yeah, Ukraine's not going to join NATO. It's a super corrupt state. Part of their National Guard is a neo-Nazi battalion, and so we want nothing to do with it. And if the U.S. bats off, Russia doesn't want it either. I mean, I've talked about this in the past on my show. In 2014, when the people of the Donbass region voted to join NATO, Putin said, no, you're going to remain a part of the Donbass in Ukraine, in part because it's an economic dependent region, a lot like I think a lot of Ukraine would be. There's a lot of corruption. And so it's not like Putin's going to annex this territory and become super rich off of it. It's just, I think, mainly a security concern. And if, you could resolve the security concern in a way that doesn't involve annexation and military intervention, it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper. And so there's so much room for easy negotiation here. And again, if American people understood any of the history, I think they would be all for it.
And that's exactly why we prevent them from learning. Yeah, that's exactly why we prevent them from learning, and why we work so hard at propagandizing them, to think exact opposite of that. Okay, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. You've been very generous with your time. Everybody should definitely check out Kyle's work on antiwar.com. He's also the news editor at Libertarian Institute. And like he's mentioned, he is the co-host of Conflicts of Interest with Will Porter and Connor Freeman and Scott Horton. You guys, anything Scott Horton does, you should go watch it. That's my opinion.
Anything.
Yeah. Yep. Anything he does, you should go watch it. Dude is a living encyclopedia. He's amazing. When we had him, I'm not joking. We were joking about this earlier, but when we had him on Facts on the Ground, we just asked him a question and then stopped talking and just let him go. That's literally what you can do with Scott Horton.
Yep.
He's fascinating. He's one of the smartest people on planet Earth, I think, a walking encyclopedia of history, and one of the best anti-war voices that we have. So definitely go check out that episode and the rest of Kyle's show. And is there anything else you have coming up you want to hype or whatever?
I'll mention the Libertarian Institute is Scott's project. I'm fortunate enough to be a part of it, so check that out. I've been writing articles almost every day for the Institute, either in the news section or as a featured article.
Awesome. So I also have Kyle's. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just gonna say, is it? I've been so off with the whole libertarian with Mises and everything else. Is Libertarian Institute associated with Mises? Are those two separate entities?
Yeah, I mean, we are two separate entities. I'm Scott's, friendly with everybody in the movement. I don't think, the Libertarian Institute would have any particular allegiances or anything. Scott, is good friends with Dave Smith, and so, people could draw, whatever conclusions they want from that. But yeah,
right.
You're in community.
You're
in community with each other. It's not necessarily that you're, working directly, as the same, unit, but you are in community with each other. And I think that that's great. I mean, that's the way it should be. So yeah, thank you for coming on. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I was involved with the Libertarians, it seemed like Mises and Libertarian Institute. And then there was a couple other kind of factions that seemed to intermingle, and then everyone else, it was a complete disaster. So
it kind of seems that way still. Liberty Twitter can be a hot mess these days.
Oh boy.
I mean, so that is one of the struggles about any kind of a lot of our movements now is that we're so online based that it's so easy for it just to be devolved so quickly.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it exactly as intended. As great as the internet is and as great as social media could be, it does also cause a lot of really dangerous problems, and it allows us to be siloed into our echo chambers and fighting over the dumbest of things. It's really frustrating. So yeah, I mean, get offline. Y'all go out and talk to your friends. Correct. Touch grass, as the cool kids say these days. Whatever, I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Kyle, for coming on. We appreciate you taking the time. We'd love to have you back anytime you want to come back on.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, guys. Do we have any updates?
We're still on.
No, I know. I'm looking for updates. Okay. So I guess we should talk Donziger. We do have good news on Donziger. So I want to play the video that he released today, which I managed to click off of. So hold please while I pull that back up. So if you guys don't know, a couple days ago, 5 days ago, in fact, Steven Donziger was So he's going to explain it in this video, but he was randomly asked to come in and bring clothes, they said. He had no idea what was happening, but he ended up in a halfway house. So this is the video that he released today. He was finally freed today from the halfway house. Oh, shoot. I don't know if I hit audio. I hate it when I do that. I am so good at this, you guys. Professional. Okay, hold on. Here we go. I did not have audio click, so I'm glad I redid it. Okay, so let me back it up. Did that come up on the screen, y'all? Did the video come up?
Now I see it.
Okay. All right. So this is, here we go. It's just 2 minutes long, so we'll play it in its entirety.
Hey, everybody. I'm back home after 5 pretty harrowing days spent locked up in a halfway house in the Bronx. The windows were nailed shut. There was very little ventilation, and they wouldn't let me out, unlike every other person in the halfway house. I literally just got fresh air for the first time today after 5 days. You know, last Wednesday, got this bizarre call in the morning. My son had just gone to school. He's in 10th grade, and it said, come in, bring clothes. And they wouldn't tell me why. I got there. They still wouldn't tell me why. 36 hours passed. And I was just sitting there, had to stay there overnight. My son came home from school that day, and his dad was gone, and we had no explanation as to when I might be back. I was really worried they were going to try to put me in prison. They finally told me what the problem was, which is that they violated me because I had been in my building, in my apartment building, but not in my apartment for a couple of hours for a meeting. Frankly, this is nonsense. And while I respect the procedures and the conditions of my very unjust and I would say illegal confinement, this was highly unusual, and I strongly suspect Chevron and its lawyers are behind it. In any event, thanks to Amnesty International, Representative McGovern, my lawyers, Ron Kuby, and thousands of people around the world who stood by me and demanded I be returned home, which finally happened today. This is an example of how Chevron still wants to disrupt my human rights work and to attack me as a way to avoid paying the judgment to the indigenous peoples in Ecuador, who the company poisoned by deliberately dumping 16 billion gallons of toxic waste in the Amazon. We need to protect me. We need to force this company to pay what it owes to the people of Ecuador. If you can help us, again, I urge you, please go to our website, freedonziger.com. One word, Free Donziger, Donziger. We need resources to deal with this monster polluter called Chevron and its attacks on me and other advocates who are working to enforce this judgment to help the indigenous peoples of the Amazon. Again, it's freedonziger.com. I'll give more details later. I'm so happy to be home, and I thank everyone who helped and stood by me. I felt the solidarity. Lots of love. I'll be reporting back soon.
Okay. So that is the update on Steven Donziger. Okay, so these are incredibly punitive and vindictive attacks. So he was in his apartment building. He just wasn't in his apartment for a couple hours, and they threw him in a halfway house and didn't let him outside for 5 days. This is insanity. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not something that should be happening at all. Never mind the fact that when he was prosecuted, it was essentially he was prosecuted by a Chevron judge. Like, a judge might as well just have been like like Chevron in human form. You know what I'm saying? But now all of these like ridiculous petty attacks after the fact, this is going to continue until people stand up and say, no, thank you. We're not doing this anymore.
You know what I think about when I see something like that is like, here this guy is, life turned upside down.
Destroyed, really.
Yeah. And like, it's like a company like Chevron is so unavoidable, right? There's somehow his money is being funneled to Chevron, whether he's buying gas from a gas station or, just people coming to visit him. There's just so many ways that money could be funneled back to them just by living his life or people around him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if something bad happens to you, it's usually like an individual, maybe it's a group, or whatever. And you just avoid that the rest of your life. If it's done something just life-changing like that to you. But like that situation for him, it's unavoidable. Like he has to still quasi support them in some manner. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what happens when we live in a monopolistic society. I mean, it's very difficult to avoid supporting any of these assholes. Like
know.
I don't shop at Walmart. I haven't shopped at Walmart since like 2007. But I mean, the Walton, it's not like that's the only the Walton family still has their fingers in other things. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I mean, it's really difficult at this point because we've allowed the consolidation of power to such a degree that, I mean, for example, media, like 5 or 6 companies control 90% of our media, everything from like newspapers, magazines, news networks, all of that stuff. So it's really difficult in order to, as they say, vote with your dollars. You know what I mean? That's becoming increasingly more difficult to do because there's just a handful of people that control everything.
Yes.
So,
food.
I mean,
food is another one.
Yeah. No, yes. I mean, if you look at, or just for example, Israel, if you want to try to boycott Israel, that's really hard to do.
Oh my God, the list.
It's so long. I try. I really do. I try my best. I have the little app. I forget what it's called. But I have the little app so I can scan UPC codes and all that stuff to see. And it's hard. It is really, really, really difficult to avoid supporting some of these a-holes. And that's why, the fight that Stephen Donzinger's in, the fight that we're all in really against corporate capture of everything is really important. I mean, it's a corporatocracy. I mean, we don't have a government. We don't have a government. Corporations are our government. They own and operate every single one of our politicians on some level. And they don't give a shit what any of us have to say. Our vote doesn't matter. All that matters is what their lobbyists say. I mean, our politicians don't even write laws. They don't even read them. They don't even read the legislation they vote on. The lobbyists write it, hand it in. They give like a little script to each politician to read on the House floor or whatever, to pretend like they know what they're talking about, but they don't read that shit. And then they vote. They vote how they're told. And that's the end of it. It's terrifying.
Yeah, the thing that they have to read would probably, take them 3 or 4 months to get through.
Yeah,
and it's
called, I forget.
They'll call it the happy puppy dog bill, and then inside it is about murdering puppies.
Right.
Somewhere
and there's
on
all
page
of these,
500.
Yeah, all this pork in it. So it's like this bill that's supposed to be about, improving schools or whatever. And then on page 72, paragraph B, it's about sending gazillions of dollars to Israel or funding, Saudi Arabia's devastation of Yemen or whatever. It's like they hide these little things throughout these bills because they know the American public isn't going to read these bills. Politicians don't read these bills. They write them. They include whatever they want. They tell the politicians how to vote for it. And that's how they manipulate the system. And that's the fight that Stephen Donzinger's in. That's why it's important that we support him.
Yeah. For some reason at the beginning of when those first stimulus checks started going out, there were some pretty good research people who were looking at some pretty deep pages in that bill and discovered this portion where it was just like funding for refurbishing parts of like the Capitol and like the landscaping and all these things
koi fish farming in wherever. You know what I mean? Like some just random corporate giveaways, essentially. That's what was happening. But like Shadow Ban Refugee did some amazing work on the Build Back Better Act and examining what's actually in that. It's garbage. The Green New Deal, garbage. Corporate giveaway, all of this stuff is. And they depend on the fact that the average American person doesn't have time to read it, and they own all of the politicians. So all they have to do is write whatever bill that they want, include whatever nonsense that they want, tell politicians how to vote for it, and then put out enough propaganda to convince the American people that it's in their best interest, and it's done. And they have no pushback.
Yeah,
that's terrifying.
Nothing to add to that. That's about as terrifying as it gets.
Yeah, and that's exactly the situation in which we find ourselves. We don't have a democracy. We don't nothing like a democracy. That's a joke. We're in a really bad spot. I know I alluded to it earlier, but the empire, it's falling. I think we're past the point of no return. In 2016, I was cautiously optimistic that if we could, push Bernie hard enough that maybe we could at least tip it back just far enough that we wouldn't go over the cliff. And that is, we're well beyond that situation now. It's bad.
The wheels are spinning as quickly as possible as we're headed towards the cliff. It's a straight drop.
Oh yeah, we've just put like the gas pedal to the floor.
Yeah,
we're going over the cliff.
Took the steering wheel off. Everything.
Yes. Yeah. Like seatbelts are off.
Yeah.
Caution to the wind. We got our roller coaster hands up. Yeah, it's going to be really, really bad. It's going to be and I don't mean to sound as AOC would put it. I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy here. That's just realistic. And I don't think enough people are aware of how bad it is, and they're not prepared at all. And that's what's going to devastate people, because they're not prepared. And I used to make fun of preppers. I did.
Yeah.
And I apologize for that now. We should have listened to you long ago, because shit's going to get real very soon. Just the CARES Act alone, the effects of just that over the next 5 to 10 years is going to devastate people.
Yeah.
I mean, in very serious ways. And that's if we don't have like a nuclear war before then, which is very possible. So, God, we're so depressing on the show.
Gee, why would Andrew need to step away from it?
I know, right? Oh, I do miss you, Andy Rue. I miss you, Andrew. Yeah. My buddy Andrew. I do miss him. He's gonna go to DC though. Oh, speaking of DC, come to DC, you guys. Come on vacation with me. Let's go. Did you hear about that? That's the new thing.
They're calling it your vacation.
Yeah, I'm crowdfunding my vacation to Washington DC
from your trolls, all your trolls.
Yeah, that's the new thing. I'm crowdfunding my vacation.
Yeah, they're gonna
stay in an Airbnb with like, of course.
Your line of saying go on vacation with me, and
fam, I got a shirt.
There's proof.
I got a shirt. It says vacation mode on 100%. Dude, I love leaning into this shit. That's Comrade Misty's Putin's buddy. Okay, that's what you want to call me. I'll lean into that. Look at that. Look.
Cloud chaser.
I have a grifter shirt. I mean, it's ridiculous nonsense. So I like to have fun with it. And so come on vacation with me. We're going to have fruity drinks with umbrellas in it. We are in fact going to, so I think it was Jesse Jett came up with the idea that when we go to DC, Steve's going to bring his green screen and we're going to do a show, a live stream with like a beach in my background.
That would be brilliant.
And I'm so going to enjoy this. It's going to be so much fun. So we're going to have action
visor,
on the beach.
Sunglasses.
Yes. I'm going to have a free drink with the umbrella in it. Maybe I'll get one of those things. You know, those shirts with like the bikini, like it looks like you have like a little hot body with a bikini. Maybe I'll get one of those. Yeah. And my like big floppy hat. And it'll be fun.
Camera around your neck.
Yeah. Total tourist. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really excited for it. So, but I would love for everybody to come on vacation with me. The more, the merrier. We need lots of noise. I've heard there's a lot of people coming. I've already heard lots of people are coming. Hunter's coming. I think Trey's coming. Sky's going to try to make it. Steve's coming. Glory's coming. Convo Couch is coming. I'm forgetting a lot of people because I'm really bad at this. I think Eric, you're going to try to come, right?
Yeah, and we'll I think offline we'll try to hash out details on that.
Yeah.
And because there's a couple things I still have to figure out. I think I can go.
Okay. Well, don't forget, we raised the money to help people with travel costs. So if you need help with travel costs, let me know. That was the whole point of doing the crowdfunding, was to make sure we had all the materials that we needed, make sure that we could get everybody there, feed everybody, all that good stuff. So I'm super pumped. I'm hoping this is going to be a good turnout. So we have In the Damn Wars on April 10th, which is a Sunday. And that's going to be like a pots and pans march through the streets. Which is always fun. Yelling like "fuck the CIA" through the streets of DC is glorious.
Fun. I did get to do that with you guys last year
in March. Yeah,
I will say that was fun.
It is fun. It's very therapeutic. I'm not even kidding you. 100%. So actually, I was talking about. I was on Twitter one time. We talked about actions on this show, and then I was talking on Twitter about how what I do is really depressing. And somebody said, you need this, you need that. And somebody was like, I think you just need to do more actions, because the way you lit up when you were talking about it, and it's true. So, I mean, my trolls are kind of right. It is, I guess, kind of a vacation. It's not really, but it is
Yeah.
fun. I've always
Not in
been
the
upfront
sense
about
of
that.
like of like going on rides or having the like free
No.
drink like you were talking about, or sitting on the beach.
But you're with like-minded people, your friends,
Yeah.
your comrades. You're fighting for a cause that you all believe in. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. You don't get a lot of sleep. But it is fun, and I make no apologies for that.
Right.
If your activism isn't fun on some level, then you're doing it wrong. So yeah, it is going to be a lot of fun. So everybody should come out, try to make it out. If you can't make it, organize an event in your own hood, in your own area. We will help you if you need help with that. I can find you other people perhaps to organize with. We can get you materials, flyers, whatever you need made up. If you need, banners or whatever, but really all it takes is a poster board, a Sharpie, and a sidewalk, and you. That's
Pretty
it.
much.
That's it. If you can't do like an actual on the ground protest for whatever reason, maybe hang up some flyers or, any number of other things that you could do. Yeah, but we need help. 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 The only thing that stops what's happening to Julian Assange is mass public pressure. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. So we need help. We need people in the streets. We need people to be loud. We need people to be obnoxious. Maybe not quite as obnoxious as I am, but I mean, if you could be like halfway, that'd be good. Yeah, we definitely need help though, for sure. The Assange DAO raised over $50 million, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy, you guys. It's a lot of fucking money. Long live the cypherpunks, y'all. Long live the cypherpunks. When one of their own is down, they all show up. That's not a joke. The Anons, the cypherpunks in general, they all come out. And that's beautiful to see. So that's not going to last all that long, as I'm sure you guys can imagine. Legal battle with the world's largest empire is expensive. So, I mean, that's going to help with legal costs and some campaigning and things like that, which is desperately needed. But yeah, we all just need to do what we can with the time, money, and resources that we all have available. So yeah, if you can make it to DC, please come out. Please come out. I would love to meet everybody.
That's the fun part too. Is
meeting everybody.
Is just because I knew a ton of you through Twitter, obviously. Man, when you got to like spend quality time, like we sat in that basement and you made shirts, and Emma and I and
I was a
others,
shirt making machine that trip.
You were
made a lot of shirts.
And there was others making buttons and this and that, but like through people making things, there was a lot of conversations had. There was just and not always about this stuff too, you know what I mean?
No.
Like it was like we'll talk about whatever, and it's like what do we all want to get back to? We all want to get back to being able to do this without like this looming cloud of doom over our head, so getting together and escaping in some sense is also part of it, and just having just a good time with people who aren't going to be the ones who are going to join the wrong side and end up screwing you in the long haul.
That's the best part, seriously. Just being in, because I think a lot of us experience this where we live our lives surrounded by, I mean, forgive the use of the term, but we're surrounded by a bunch of normies, right? Like they don't know what's going on. They have no idea what's happening to Julian Assange or what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Yemen. They don't know. And so you can't have conversations about those things with most people in our lives. Every once in a while we've got like a couple people we can lean on or whatever, but being able to get together in a house full of people who are all working towards the same goals. And while we may have disagreements or differences of opinion on certain issues, we all recognize that we're on the same team, we're working towards the same stuff. And it really is like the camaraderie is just amazing. It feels really good to be surrounded by people who get it. And that's really therapeutic too.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that was much needed for me too. At the time, I had other things going on in my life too, but it was just, it's just that peace of mind too, that like, okay, I'm not the only one, you know, because you can sit isolated.
Yeah.
I live by myself, you know. I have a lot of like thoughts that bounce around my head all day, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So just it's that whole human interaction thing. There's something to it. There's something to the touch grass thing. There's something
Yeah.
to the, you know, just, you know, a handshake, a bro hug, you know,
A
something,
high five, or whatever.
Yeah,
Just being in the
like,
same physical space with people.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say though that when we went in January, it was very, very heavy. March was a lot more fun because it was for the extradition ruling. You know, when I got there, I think we all thought that they were going to rule in favor of extradition. I mean, all of us. So I showed up pissed off. You know what I mean? Like I was ready to fight the minute I got there. And so I will say that the last day, on actually January 4th, when they announced no extradition, it sucked because Judge Vanessa Breitzer agreed with U.S. prosecution on all of the like really crucial points. But then for them to say no extradition, it was confusing, but it was like, wait, what? Like, and it was just so great. Seriously, I could watch the video of us reacting to that whole thing over and really not for our reactions, for Allie's reaction from London. That is still one of my favorite things that's ever happened. The fact that that Allie was live streaming with us from the streets of London. And because she's on the ground, she didn't know what was going on. Like we were feeding her information through Kevin Gastula's tweets. And so Steve actually got to be the one to tell Allie, who then told the rest of the London crew that there was no extradition. And watching her reaction and listening to all of the people on the streets react after she told them is it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. It's one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. I love it. And like you can go back and look, and like I did screenshots because you can watch Allie's face as she like recognizes what's happening, because it's like and it's like it was like
it is confusing as hell, because if I would have been in her position and somebody, you know, and everything else that was said leading up to no extradition, I'd be like, no, I didn't hear that right. What did you say?
I know that's all of us, because
I mean?
it was like shitty tweet, really shitty tweet, and we were all like, oh, whatever. Like Steve was like, are you okay? Because I didn't talk because I was that pissed off. I was honestly ready to like go into the streets of DC and just fight random people. I was that angry, and I've never been in a fight. I was ready to fight some fucking people. I was pissed. But then like it's shitty tweet, and then all of a sudden Steve says something. He reads like one tweet that's like, kind of like, and it was like, I was like, what? And so you can actually see in the video my head whip up, and I'm like, what? And then it's something like, the U.S. prosecution has just lost their case. Blah, 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 no extradition. And it took, I would say, a good 45 seconds for any of us to realize what's actually happening.
I would have questioned the hell out of it.
Yeah, no, I was so confused. And then, and then Andrew's like trying to like find alternate sources. Is this real? And we're like trying to figure it out. And then, and what's funny is one of the reasons why I didn't want to talk is because I cry when I'm pissed. And I didn't want to cry on camera. I kept telling Kendra, I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to get mad and it's going to make me cry. And I don't want to cry on camera. And then they ruled no extradition and I cried on fucking camera. I'm like a sobbing little girl. Like I was a mess. We're like a cuddle puddle on this couch, this horribly uncomfortable couch in our shitty Airbnb. Oh, but that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Oh, what a weird day. Anyways, I think that's about all we have for you guys. It's kind of been a slow news week on or slow news day, perhaps, on whistleblowers and stuff. Please write to Daniel Hale, though. He would still appreciate getting letters, articles, all of that stuff. I do think he's reached his limit on books. I'll try to double check on that for sure. I know that like last week he had reached his limit on books. Write to Assange, write to Commander X. Support Steven Zonziger if you can support him financially, or if you can just raise some, attention to what's happening to him. Joshua Scholl, all of these whistleblowers, truth tellers, political prisoners, Mumia, and Rashad McGee, and all of these people. Leonard Pelletier, he's sick. He had COVID, been in prison for like 48 years, I think. Yeah, a long fucking time for some dumb shit. So make noise for these people. It's the only way that we're ever gonna win. Support truth tellers. We need to. Daniel's coming to DC too. Yeah. Daniel's coming to DC.
Good
I
dude.
don't know if
I remember
Kendra's
him up
coming or
there.
not. Beth's coming, our good friend Beth, who always shows up. Kimber. Yeah, bunch of cool people. It's gonna be a good time. We're trying to get some really awesome speakers too. I'm trying to get Jesse Jett to come perform. So yeah, please come to DC. Please and thank you. It's a vacation with Comrade Misty. It'll be fun. Okay, I think that's all we have for you guys. We appreciate you hanging out in the chat. And we will see you on Friday. Bye, everybody.